And so what I'm doing here is I'm converting the population growth in absolute terms into a percent and creating a new column with that value. And then I'm simply just out. So I'm not combining, I'm not doing any combination between 50 states, at least in this situation. Just setting the stage for one more time. Okay, so let's add a control parameter. We know that we need a control parameter anytime we want to have batch rate grow. We'll create a label called input name. And then the instructions on this one are very prescriptive, but if we connect the queue of the control parameter, oh my goodness. Let's just get this. We connect the queue of the control parameter into the lightning bolt of the input file. We automatically get the action tool rather than having to add it. And then pretty easy option, update input data tool. We don't need to do any further configuration. And so what this is doing is, right, remember we're going to be connecting this macro to a directory tool. The directory tool outputs a list of files. And so directory tool plus a batch macro that references new input data tools. You're just going to cycle through every CSV in that directory location. So Alabama is going to come first, then Alaska, Arizona, all the way down to Wyoming. Yeah, John's from Wyoming, you got it. All right. Then we need to add a control parameter to the output data tool. Call this output data. And then connect that queue down to like. Let the action tool pop up, and then just as easily update output data tool. Like that. So what's pretty interesting about this macro? What do we not see that we typically see on most macros? Yeah. Exactly. There's no macro inputs or outputs, which kind of blew my mind the first time I saw this workflow. But the reason is because we've connected this, or we will be connecting this to that directory tool. So a pretty powerful use case where directory tool plus batch macro, we're just updating the input tool inside of the macro. No input macro, no macro output. So let's save this one too. Save as browse. Start from class. You see that YXMD convert to YXMC. Now let me add leads in the containers to turn them off. So I'm on this one. Now let's bring in that macro. So I could try to get it into, yeah, I guess right clicking on the container itself, you're not going to get that insert. So we'll have to put it on the canvas and then drag it. So right click, insert. Let me come over to all the way over here. So the whole. So right click, insert, macro. And then start in class, population growth, or browse if you're not seeing. Now I can get it in my containers. And we did a lot of this setup already. So if we can review, like, especially if you don't have much experience with the directory tool. So the directory tool pulls in the full path of the file that it finds. And then a bunch of information on the last time they were written, access, what size they are, yada yada. We select down pretty heavily here on our pre-built tool, just the full path of the file name. And then this formula tool is doing something interesting. It's basically taking the full path of the input and just modifying something slightly to say, okay, the name of the input tool, or the input file, if that's Alabama, California, Colorado, Delaware, I want to call it that same thing, but I want to move it to a specific output folder. So neat little trick. It's not something that, like, this isn't the point of class, but I just have to explain it in order to understand what we're actually doing with the macro. Right? So you can see we're replacing, taking replace. This is a section of the input full path. And then I'm just creating a new folder called outputs. And then I'm going to have 50 output files. So just maybe it's a little cool trick to add to your bag. So once I get to the control parameter, I'm saying full path for input name, and then destination path or dest path for the output data string. And I still have Kentucky open. I'm going to close that. And if you still had any of the CSVs open, you probably had the same error. Go ahead and close it. Great. And then I can go look for those files. There's nothing on the screen other than maybe a message that 51 iterations were run. And I will find all 50 of those files. They were in there already, I would imagine, but we just overwrote them 1 minute ago. All right, if I open one, I can see that population growth column listed. Right. Wow, Riverside County. Nobody could afford it. So that completes the 2 use cases. Any good time for questions? I'll finish up some of the slideware.